Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have Steve back with me and we're going to be doing the question and answer.
Hey Lennon, how are you? Thanks for hosting me again.
Yeah, no problem. All right, let's jump right into the first question. And for all the viewers, thanks so much for sending in your questions. I really appreciate it. And also on Steve's end, you guys sending in messages on Twitter and everything like that, we really appreciate it. So thanks a lot. All right, getting in. Can you go in detail as to why the Wall Street Reporter interview was deferred?
Yeah, I want to make sure that when we're using channels like Wall Street Reporter and having a live stream interview with Jack, we have quite a large audience every time we do those. There's typically around as many as 1,000 live viewers, and we get many thousands of follow-on views later. It was important for me to defer because I want to make sure that when I'm coming on, I'm really using the channel to give the type of updates that I want. And, we have a number of very important updates and news items pending. And I don't want to waste, the opportunities to share the good news with our followers and shareholders. And so I just felt, rather than take that time and have an interview that maybe didn't have enough content, or maybe it would come across that I wasn't able to share some very large news and perhaps run the risk of disappointing some people, I'm better to defer it and ask everybody to be patient and have confidence that, when I get onto these large channels, I'm definitely going to have some things to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was a good decision on your part. Thanks for clearing that up. Moving on to the next question. Why was the number of tests changed from 2K tests per day in March to now only 1K in regards to the January press release and the most recent press release?
So I did read that information. I think somebody else had sent a question like that in, and I found it actually kind of unusual because nothing changed at all. If you go and take a look at those two press releases sort of side by side, what I'm trying to do while keeping within sort of the guidelines that we kind of fall under is to let everybody know that our demand is increasing all the time with our CHI medical laboratory and our COVID-19 products and services. And what I was indicating in the two press releases is we have the potential to see maybe 1,000 units per month, or in February or March, or maybe 1,000 units per month in the first quarter, and maybe even 2,000 units a month in the second quarter. I'm not saying that's what we are actually going to do, but the way I'm feeling the demand surge. So if I look back on October, November, December, so we just closed the CHI acquisition on October 6th. And we didn't fully understand how quickly how much R&D investment we would give them, what sort of taking control of this new business would look like. But we found ourselves, even in the first month, really getting a lot of traction. And they set a record for themselves for the entire year in that month of October. Then we get to November and they doubled their volume. And we weren't, really anticipating that. And then we get to December, they tripled the volume from October. And we come into January and that volume surge just kept on going, like literally, whatever the first business day was I think was January 2nd, is the volumes just kept on ramping up. And, we've had a very strong month of January. Our final financial numbers, my internal numbers, aren't out yet, but I certainly know the volume of tests that we processed were consistent with what I was sort of indicating as we were getting through the month. That demand for our products is just continuing. It is just not slowing down in any form whatsoever. We're seeing really interesting demand right now for our CHI saliva tests, and we're also seeing a lot of demand now for the rapid antigen tests. Although they're not available for Canada, at least the rapid antigen test at this stage, the CHI saliva test is probably going to be available fairly soon. I'll probably be updating our audience on that later this week. We've done some kind of interesting things to get through the MDEL application process so that we can make the product available for sale in Canada and open up that market. So in answering that question about volume, the indications were kind of, we have the potential to get to 1,000 or 2,000 tests in a month, sometime in the first quarter and or sometime in the second quarter. And that nothing's changed on that front. So I wasn't intentionally trying to create some confusion or even change kind of the indicators. All the indicators of demand remain very solid for us.
Yeah, and that's testing per day, right?
That's testing per day. Yeah. So our monthly numbers are, in the many thousands per month. It's it's great to see, right? It's really great to see.
Yeah. All right. So just following up with that kind of question, do you expect to sell any of your Kai saliva tests on e-commerce, such as Amazon or anything like that?
So I think the potential of that exists. So, I'm very familiar with Amazon stores and Amazon Prime and how that works. Right now, the top priority on direct-to-consumer is getting the final version of the kaitest.com pushed live. We have our new packaging is completed. It's a great consumer-friendly design, and we've printed, I don't even know how many tens of thousands of those we've already printed, and they are at the fulfillment center in Florida. The other form of direct-to-consumer that we're working on are with channel partners. So think of partners like pharmacies or grocery stores. So we're in fairly high-level discussions already in accessing those markets. There's many tens of thousands of pharmacies in the United States. Not quite as many in Canada, but the market's still extremely large. And we know that consumer demand for these at-home tests we believe are going to continue to be very strong, particularly because of the executive orders that we all live under now as it relates to travel, whether it's Canada or the US or international locations. So I think, us spending the money that we did on R&D so quickly after the acquisition is really paying off now. And it's putting us in kind of a leadership position, both in the US and in Canada. And we're seeing demand coming from international countries now as well. So we'll just see what some of these new purchase orders look like in the not too distant future.
Oh yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see kind of.
So are we.
What was the delay for the website, for the Kai website?
The delay is just getting it done. We're just so darn busy with so many things, and I've got a branding team. I've got our graphic design team. We've got our e-commerce developers who are specialists in direct-to-consumer e-commerce models. So I'm expecting to see the dev version, sort of pre-go live version, actually on the site itself, probably in the next few days. The design elements are all primarily done, and we just are, continue to go through iterations to get it right. We don't, the instructions I've given for everybody is get us a functional site that works, knowing that we'll continue to make it better and we'll iterate over time to make it more functional and perform better. But we've got lost opportunity cost by not getting the site up and running, not getting to these new channels. And we've got a bunch of inventory that is ready to go. And so we're very anxious to get it out. But it's just a matter of a few days before I'm going to be ready to sort of sign off on the version. And like I say, we'll put it out there and make sure it works. And then we'll just keep on making it better as we go. But we have established a 1-800 number now. We've established some call center reps to start receiving phone calls. So we're having all of those pieces. You can't just launch a website direct to consumer and not be able to, deal with calls, deal with emails, and customer service or questions. So we're having to do all of that at the same time and running as fast as we possibly can.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is the lab equipment leased or is it owned?
Oh, well, primarily it's owned. We have a couple of pieces that are leased. We might recall, I might have talked about it previously as we completed the Kai Medical acquisition, but it had about 1.5 million US in medical diagnostics equipment and lab equipment and lab equipment. And I think there might only be one piece of machinery, if I recall, that is actually leased, or it might be two. But these are, physical assets that will go onto the balance sheet of the public company that will be reflected in the year-end statements for December 31st. And we've already started our audit, but those numbers won't be out until late April.
What is going on with the clinic expansion? Any kind of news or any kind of thing that you can comment on?
Yeah, so you're talking about the Canadian clinics?
Yeah.
So we are making great strides in that. I will hold off just briefly on what I can say about it further, but I would expect that no one will be disappointed with what we're coming out with here very shortly. We've had a game plan from the beginning. We are not stalled in any format. Both Dr. Jordan and Dr. Aviv are working around the clock. They're doing a great job in getting our next centers lined up and ready to go to market. And we should have some imminent announcements about what that looks like, both in the short term and kind of what the long-term game plan is. But I'm certain that all of our followers, I know everybody's anxious for some extra disclosure on this, but I'm confident if everybody's patient with me, everybody's going to be fairly satisfied.
Yeah, even on the weekend, I was cranking down some numbers, just like trying to figure out if you guys like hit the goal of 30 clinics at the end of the year, and just like cranking down numbers. So yeah, I'm super excited.
Yeah, the financial modeling on it is very, very accretive, very, very attractive, and I'm always so concerned about operating our individual locations on a cash flow positive basis as well. It's not just about throwing, a top end number. I want to see, each of these units be accretive, contribute to the EBITDA that's generated going forward, so that we start to move into positive earnings per share, not just running this for the sake of top line. I want our long-term fundamentals to be very strong and something that we can count on.
Yeah, and I think people still need to understand how it's crazy that you guys are positive cash flow, and that needs to be kind of like heard and understood, because I think that's a really big.
Yeah, I think on that talk, you're right. It's a really good point, actually, Landon, and it's one of the things that I've worked so hard on in the last 2 years is to find our methods of growth, yet keep on working on the general principles of generating free cash flow. And if you look at kind of our path forward from here, as we get our first year-end results out and then our first quarter results out, it's going to start to make sense. The other thing is, as you alluded to, what you were doing over the weekend, which is modeling out, well, what would hitting milestone 1 of 10 clinics look like on an annualized basis? What would 20 clinics look like? What would 30 clinics look like? Knowing that our objective is to bring primary care centers together with our paramedical care centers into a larger comprehensive delivery of care to patients. And so we know what revenue should be on a per physician basis in primary care. We know what revenue should be for a paramedical center based on the number of practitioners. And then the variables are, square footage. We can't put, 6 medical doctors and 6 paramedical practitioners into a 1,500 square foot facility, but we can do it on a 3,000 or 3,500 square foot facility. So a lot of it depends on the real estate and how that plays out. And that will help dictate kind of what the size of a particular location is going to be. But we know and understand what that math is down to the clinician, down to the MD. And then we can model that out on a pro forma basis in outer years. So annualized 2021, then what could that look like in 22 or 23?
Yeah, it's great to see you guys have kind of mastered a plan.
We try. We definitely try.
All right, moving on to probably one of the most asked questions is, how many warrants do you have left? And what's the cash value of the warrants?
Okay, let's think about this math. So we've been very fortunate. We kind of crossed over already the $8 million cash mark
Wow.
in the warrant conversions. That was probably by, I'd say about 10 days ago, maybe we crossed over that threshold. So the warrant requests and conversions have slowed down quite substantially. There are still probably, I'm going off the top of my head, but probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 million, 45 million warrants that are yet to be exercised. But a lot of those are starting to be closely held. So as an example, I've got warrants, but I don't need to do anything with them. I don't want to do anything with them at this point in time. I'll convert them before they expire naturally, but it's not something that I need to do at this stage. We've got a very solid cash position, as you know, and we're utilizing that cash carefully. I still protect it, with my life because we don't know where markets ultimately go. We need to be very selective and careful, but we do need to deploy that capital to grow, and that's happening. So things like R&D or the branding for Kai Medical, the buying more inventory of saliva kits, buying more inventory of our rapid antigen kits. So there's a number of areas that we are deploying the capital, but obviously fairly close. And I think the question comes about because maybe some people might interpret the fact that if there's any sort of slowdown in stock price, like ramp up, that you would blame it on warrants. And to some extent, I understand that, but I don't, always feel that, that's, the real case. Sometimes, markets can be bumpy in a particular week that is, way out of our control. And then obviously we've got, an appetite right now for some, bigger milestone news. And I'm very, very aware of that. But I also have to be disciplined in our approach and make sure that, we have good quality news. You don't just do news for the sake of doing news. I think that we earn a reputation by making sure that the quality of news is important. Not every press release is the biggest one ever, and not every week in the markets is a boom week. So, we want rapid growth in share price, but we also want it to consolidate at each of those new milestones on the way up and stay strong. We don't want a big up and then a big fall. We want that careful consolidation all the way up. So.
Exactly. And also sometimes I even looked up the ratio, and sometimes it would be short selling. So it's not always like people like to just find something that they can kind of like blame it on. And so I would say like sometimes you can say like warrants and stuff like that, but a lot of the people who are holding the warrants are people who are holding and they're waiting for dollars.
That's very true. I mean, we know in a market when you have that big run up and we got big warrant conversions, there's going to be some selling. I mean, that's just a natural part of a natural market. I can't control selling like anybody else can. But what we certainly do know, because I know many of the investors who converted, is they're absolutely converted and holding. They have no intention of letting go now. Thankfully, we've had solid liquidity for a sustained period of time. So even when we had a lot of that early conversion of warrants coming through, we had enough liquidity to start chewing through that and find kind of a whole new shareholder base. So those that did, I want to take some money off the table, so be it. And then there's many new people that came in, and many of the converts, they're holders because they've got the same belief that I do and you do, that we've got a long way to go here, and we're just at our next phase of kind of launch, and we've got I think a very good game plan, and we're building one heck of a team now. We're getting a lot of new characters in who are really contributing to kind of the path going forward.
Yeah, exactly. I think you guys are at like a really big inflection point.
Yeah.
Do you intend to do a reverse split?
I don't have any specific intention right now. I've talked about this topic before. As we did the AGM last year, one of the technical steps that I took was to create the ability for us by board resolution to do a reverse split in the future if we deemed it necessary. And the reason that I had to make that technical step is our parent company is a Canadian federally incorporated entity. And by rule, you would have to get a shareholder vote at the time you wanted to do a split. So we created the technical capability through the AGM to enable our board to make that decision if we so choose in the future. Right now, it's not kind of there on the radar. I think some of it will depend on the concept of uplisting, and do we at the point in time where we decide that we want to uplist, then depending on the market that we want to uplist to, there may be some share price minimum requirements, such as NASDAQ as an example. And if we're not meeting that threshold for whatever reason at that time, a technique that you use is to do a reverse to get you above the threshold, and then you finish your uplisting. But we don't have any specific date in mind. We don't have an amount in mind, but we've given ourselves the capability if we so choose in the future.
Okay. Next is, do you have any potential contracts with pro sports such as the NHL or anything like that?
So we're in discussions. So I'm seeing more and more online noise about the NHL and things like that. I can tell you that in conjunction with Loop Insights, there's discussions going on with Major League Baseball. We know that Loop Insights has previously done the NC2A bubbles. That is coming up again. I think March Madness is not that far around the corner. So we're definitely involved in different levels of conversations with different pro sports. We are in dialogue with the Canucks organization here in Vancouver. And we have some, good contacts and friends who are, the senior executives in those groups. So I'm certainly leveraging those relationships that I have and that others have around the country and in North America. So nothing to announce on that yet, but I can confidently tell you that we're working on those conversations. I consider them all opportunities amongst many other opportunities that are coming our way. We're seeing demand just from everywhere we turn. Doesn't matter whether it's public sector, private sector, direct to consumer. I think that we're really going to be able to do something with bigger with our rapid antigen tests. I think we're definitely going to be able to do some great things with our saliva home-based test. We just know that demand is there.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. That sounds good. I look forward to some news on that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the telehealth aspect of the company?
Yeah, sure. So telehealth is, still well underway. We run telehealth kind of every day in our clinics in the US. The Canadian side of it, I think, is going to be quite interesting for us. The concept of virtual care, whatever that looks like, whether it's telephone conversation, whether it's video dialogue, particularly as we launch into our primary care services, because the application for telehealth and virtual care will apply more on the primary care side than it would, say, on the paramedical care. I think if you had a bank of naturopaths, I see naturopathic doctors being able to do more virtual treatment. The paramedical services, because of the nature of the services being quite hands-on and physical in nature, tends to be obviously in clinic. But when the healthcare has really changed, the pandemic has shown us that the delivery of care can change for the better. So I think we'll see a lot more involvement as we get through these initial rollouts of our primary care facilities, starting, the next ones in Canada. in the very near future. And then how we roll in the technology layer or new technologies, probably based on acquisition more than anything, is kind of will be my focus on the tech side with healthcare. So I think it's just a topic that will be a constant going forward for us. We're not going to be living without it, and I want us to be at the forefront as much as we can in the delivery of that type of care to our patients.
Yeah, sounds good. Have you had any patient growth with the clinics?
Had any patient growth in the clinics? Well, the short answer is yes. We are growing patients. I mean, patient growth comes by our acquisitions alone. So just think of the closing of the Canadian acquisition. We've added 20,000 patients to our roster in Canada. Yeah. Every time we open a new center, we're going to be adding patients. And when we discuss it, when we announce each of these individual locations, whether it comes by virtue of a letter of intent to open a location, or it's just straight to the lease agreement and we sign the lease agreement and I let everybody know, we'll size that location. We'll size it by the number of estimated patients. We'll look at the demographics of the postcode or the zip code of the location. We'll look at the square footage that we're taking, and then we'll size the number of primary care physicians and the number of paramedical practitioners to give everybody a real feel for what that clinic should do, or that healthcare center, what it should do from a revenue standpoint going forward. And it's, like I say, it's a very, very prescribed, very kind of tight mathematical formula that I'll be able to articulate. And then everybody will have an understanding, kind of going back to your, what does 10 clinics do for us? What would 20 clinics do for us on run rates? What would 30 do for us on annualized run rates? And then everybody can kind of thoroughly understand your own investment thesis, for whether, you maintain a position, raise a position, get out of a position, whatever the case. But we'll definitely help our followers and shareholders understand that sort of mathematical equation.
Yeah. I think that's also why a lot of people like the company, is just because it is something that you can kind of calculate and like find out the value. So I think that's another thing that's really great about the company. All right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. And there's obviously a whole variety of different industries and stocks, and the fundamentals of why a certain stock goes up or falls, or can be different sector by sector. But I definitely believe in where we're positioning ourselves. We can demonstrate significant ongoing top line revenues. All the activity that we're doing. I mean, look at Kai Medical, how it's going to be. We're adding 3 months of revenue from Kai into our 2020 financials. We came out of the gate in January, just gangbusters. And it's all accretive right now to the overall results for 2021 in our annualized run rates. And we're going to have a full year of Kai now, not just 3 months. And we'll have a full year of the Canadian clinics, obviously phased, right? Because we won't go from 0 to 30 all at the same time. Yeah. But you're going to be seeing some pretty rapid growth coming here, commencing right away in the first quarter on the Canadian clinic side.
Yeah, that's going to be crazy to see those 2020 numbers, and then I'm going to be more excited to see those 2021. Can you touch on the Simply Flying and just travel bubble and talks with airlines, cruise lines, and airports?
Yeah, of course. So probably more of the conversations actually come about in conjunction with Loop Insights and us together. That's a very natural fit, very complementary. Yeah. Rob Anson, their CEO, and I, we're in communication literally every single day. And so we've had extensive discussions with the cruise lines. Unfortunately, the Canadian government just recently announced that they're canceling all cruise ships coming to port in Canada for a year. So that was very disappointing news to hear, just for the reopening of the Canadian economy. We are in extended dialogues with large lines like Royal Caribbean, Disney, Norwegian. There are many large ports in the United States, as an example. They need programs. They need COVID testing programs. They also need our help with the delivery of medical care, such as med techs. So, Royal Caribbean, as an example, does not want to be in the specimen collection business, nor do they want to, figure out how to provide COVID-19 tests. They want that to be kind of outsourced to a dedicated partner like us. Just like contact tracing, wallet pass, check-in is not something that they want to do.
Yeah.
Happens to be a great partner, Loop Insights, who's got proven technology that they could deploy. So to directly answer your question, we're still addressing what's going on with airlines and the travel bubbles and the executive orders. I mean, since we last talked, Canada's executive orders on travel have come through. The US executive orders come through. The Chi Medical saliva test is ideally suited. I mean, the design that we put through R&D was not just about being a direct-to-consumer program. It's also designed to help these travel situations, because you can take the Chi saliva test kit with you when you travel, knowing that 72 hours before you have to come home, the clock starts ticking. You need to process your specimen collection and get it back into the courier envelope that we provide and send it to us, so that we can get you your negative test so you can get in the airport and get on the plane. So it's a perfect application for travelers. So we think marketing that together with the airlines or with cruise lines or with pharmacies or grocery stores, not to mention direct to consumer at kitest.com, I think we have to be able to serve all channels. And I think that we have the ability to do that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Because actually the next question was just talking about kind of you guys like to talk about the Canadian side of things and just like reaching out with like Air Canada, WestJet, etc. And then so a lot of people always wonder like what's going on with the US. Like the US is such a big market. So just hearing you guys say like those kind of big names like Norwegian Cruise Line, Royal Caribbean, like that gets me excited.
Well, you're right. I mean, we just announced the Detroit Market Center as a new win. It's 2.5 miles around the corner from the lab. We are writing. We're one of the late stage partners. Not partners, not the right word. We're late stage bidder on the Dallas Fort Worth COVID testing initiative, where they're opening up 3 physical test locations and labs at Dallas Fort Worth International Airport, which is the 2nd largest airport in the world by travelers, just behind Atlanta. It's 5 miles from our location. And so we are able to chase after these very large opportunities because we have the capability. We've got the capital runway that others don't have. So you can't even begin to consider bidding on a project like Dallas Fort Worth if you didn't have the capital runway to do it, right? It's too large. Yeah, exactly. And we are in many late stage discussions over the past week on very large rapid antigen orders, on Chi saliva test orders. And again, we're looking at distribution points in the US, distribution points in Canada. We are not forgetting the US market. We are built for the US market, but we like the Canadian market. We're a Canadian public company. I think we can really do a lot for Canadians as an integrated healthcare company, but I am not losing sight of the sheer magnitude or the scale of the US market.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
And just to comment on Loop Insights, like you guys are just like this perfect pair, and you're just like, for any company, they could just have Loop and Empower, and then you guys can just take care of like the COVID needs. It's great.
Yeah, and that's what we do. That's why it's so complementary, because I have my network, our team has their network. We've got salespeople on the ground, business development people on the ground, opening doors on the premise of integrated healthcare and COVID testing, and we cross-refer back into Loop and bring them in. Loop is doing the exact same thing. Cross-refer us in. You just saw Loop's announcement of being awarded the Big White Ski Resort contract. Well, we've been pushed into that conversation already. So these crossovers, are very important. And it's why you strike partnerships, but you do it carefully. You've got to do it with the right people, the right team members, so that, you can have a long-term working relationship. Rob and I are not in this for a very short-term little win. We see the need for our products and services lasting many years. And by virtue of a contract being awarded for 4 years at Big White should indicate to everybody where our society will continue to remain for a long time to come.
Yeah.
And this is independent of the concept of vaccine, is that these particular, we're in a new paradigm now. So I feel confident, secure to continue to invest for the future. I don't think our market's going away for testing in any form. And of course, our delivery of integrated healthcare, that's always going to be with us. So we just want to be a strong, national and potentially international player in the healthcare sector.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think it's going away anytime soon. Do you plan on moving to a different exchange? You kind of commented on this already, but any kind of like time frame that like you're looking to uplist or anything like that?
Yeah, so I can't give a specific time frame other than the earliest that I can possibly do it, we're going to do it. I feel that we are built for a bigger market. We're built for NASDAQ.
Yeah.
And I think, getting access to that institutional investor base, the investor base in the US is 10 times larger than Canada. There are a lot of powerful institutions that if you're on a large uplisted market like NASDAQ and integrated healthcare fits perfectly, you go and look at some of the big players that I continue to talk about from a comp standpoint, like TDOC and Amwell. These are turning into behemoths. I feel at some point we are deserving of that same sort of credibility, that same sort of having the institutional coverage, having analyst coverage, being able to provide guidance and operate, like a Fortune 500 company. I believe that we're built for that. And so I don't know what, a lot of it depends on the market, how our market is doing, how we're doing in the market. And, but, my position on it to all of our followers is the soonest that we can do it, I'll have us prepared for it, and we will make it happen for sure.
Mm-hmm. So kind of, would you rather get listed through the NASDAQ from getting your stock price right now up, or would you rather do it from doing a reverse split?
Well, I'd ultimately rather do it from just natural organic price rise, right? And that, would be a better path for us. It still may make sense to consolidate later anyhow, but it's not ready for that right now. I'm not worried about the shares outstanding at this point in time. And so if we could get it, organically, that'd be outstanding, right?
Yeah.
So we take it.
Yeah. What date was the MDIL application filed, and approximate date it can be approved?
Okay, filing, I feel like it was 3 weeks ago now. Right early in January, I had Dr. Aviv and Dr. Jordan front that for us. Now, we have received back what Health Canada does is after they receive the application, they acknowledge back to you that they have received it. They give you a tracking number, and but they make no promises. They tend to indicate that it could take up to 120 days. We have an MDEL or a Health Canada medical device consultant who's helping us try to move it along. We've got some other strategies on the short term that we think we can accelerate the timeline. and there'll be more to come on that in the next couple of days, actually, to try to speed up this concept of being able to start bringing samples of our saliva tests, into the country. But at this stage, I can't send product to the border because it would be a violation of Health Canada guidelines. And so we just can't do that. We just need to be patient. But we're definitely on top of it because we recognize the importance of getting this done.
Yeah. Just a couple more questions because I know we're running out of time. Can Empower Clinics create an investor webinar?
Yeah, you mean from time to time? Yeah, we absolutely could. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
I mean,
sure.
it's not a difficult thing to do. It's simply just, what frequency would you do it on? And maybe this is something that as a best practice for 2021 going forward, maybe we should be looking at doing something quarterly, sort of in conjunction with our financials coming out. We really just, if you look back previously, we were still trying to figure out, kind of our best path forward. I think now we've got a substantially larger following than we had even a quarter ago. And I think it would be a good forum now. I try to do a lot of interviews like this.
All right, last question. What do you think about all the other companies doing COVID testing? And how do they compare to Kai Laboratory? An Australian company got over 200 million funding from the Biden administration, and Canada, major companies like Air Canada, Roger, have teamed up with the University of Toronto to develop their own antigen COVID test for employees as well. What's the difference between Kai and the rest of the tests available on the market?
So I think I'll start with the second part of the question, which is just about our tests. So our Kai saliva test will stand up against any test that's out there. We did the clinical validations. I've seen the results of it. The accuracy and the specificity ratings are high 99% because it's ultimately a PCR test. And so and then when you combine that with our new branding, our consumer packaging, even if you look at the inserts that are in there that I'll be able to share with everybody shortly, it's a very good product that I think will be received very positively or well by users and consumers, businesses alike. With respect to other opportunities, you alluded to sort of government opportunities, any government grants. So we're working on a couple of different initiatives on the US government side, trying to get ourselves onto these specialized, they're almost protected bidders lists, quite frankly, that are not easy to kind of navigate through or even get involved in. But I have been in some good discussions last week with some potential partners who specialize in working with government, selling to government. I'm talking about the US government. Within Canada, we're kind of doing the same thing, but it's a bit more at the provincial level. Mm-hmm. So getting our paths to working with the Ontario Ministry of Health, BC Ministry of Health, Alberta Ministry of Health, and really just elevating our stature. Our footprint in Canada is still new. We just closed the Canadian Clinic acquisition, right? We don't even have our MDEL license yet, so I can't even sell to any of these divisions, but it's not precluding us from starting the conversations. So again, we're working with our network. We've got professional colleagues that we're leaning on who have very senior relationships and figuring out the best way to use our network to enter into those discussions. We've already been having discussions with the airlines, so we're definitely on everybody's radar there. And we continue to identify how we can have the most senior of discussions so that I'm talking directly to decision makers. We know there's an urgent need for our products and services, so we're pushing the agenda. We're not sitting kind of politely by waiting for kind of middle management, programs to kind of work their way through. We don't have time for it. We've got too much demand to meet. We have to have the senior conversations. We have to talk to decision makers, and that's my bottom line on that stuff.
Yeah, you guys are being proactive about it.
Oh, yeah.
It right away.
Yeah, we are.
All right, well, that wraps up the Q&A. Thanks so much, Steve, for coming on. Everyone's going to really appreciate this. And those were really good answers and really good questions. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you as well, Landon. And let's keep a regular rhythm on this. It's really important to talk to diverse audiences, and using newer channels like yours. My sense is a lot of your followers and my followers, we're kind of coming together, and it's a great platform. And I do thank all of the shareholders for listening and paying attention, and getting the questions into all the different hashtags and info at and DMs. I think we'll definitely, again, try to do this on a fairly regular basis, because there are going to be a lot more questions based on all the new things that I'm going to talk to you about over the coming weeks. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of appetite for some more questions. But thank you, Landon.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, and can't wait for you to come back.